It is the height of design and technology. Accutron. It's not a timepiece. It's a conversation piece.
Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. Now, before we get into this important watch, don't forget to click like if you enjoy these independent, free, and unbiased reviews. Oh, and of course, don't forget to check out the Instagram as well. I'll leave all the links and everything in the description. So here we are, finalmente. I mean, it feels like I've been waiting I have literally been waiting 2 years to review this extremely important watch. So I'll do a quick wristwatch check. Yes, I'm still wearing the Cartier Santos that I recently unboxed. And I've also brought in this is a vintage Accutron, my own vintage Accutron. It's on the mesh Wrist Candy Watch Club strap there. I just think the colors work. I bought this after seeing it on the wrist of not only Mark from a Long Island Watch, my good friend, but actually one of my heroes, the late great Sir Richard Rogers, a personal British-Italian hero of mine. And I've also got a deep connection with Bulova as a brand because, as you guys know, I lived in Queens for over a decade and I used to pass the Bulova building constantly. But anyway, enough rabbiting on. Let's get into the history to help contextualize today's watch. When it comes to history, I could seriously make an hour-long special just on the brand's illustrious achievements, perhaps even a whole Netflix-style series. So forgive me if we gloss over any of your favorite parts, but please do share them in the comments. Accutron started as a line of watches from Bulova, the renowned American timepiece manufacturing company that was founded in 1875 and has been based in New York ever since the 1920s. Aside from being an industry leader in developing watchmaking tools and its watches being famously worn, much later during the Apollo 15 NASA moon mission in 1971, its greatest horological achievement, without a shadow of a doubt, has to be the revolutionary Accutron watch technology of the 1960s. To truly comprehend Accutron, we have to rewind a little bit. Imagine a pre-quartz and pre-digital age, the late 1950s, an exciting and booming United States of America, where throughout the world, mechanical watches and clocks were not only king, but still depended on by simply everybody. In 1957, Hamilton introduced the Hamilton electric watch, the first battery-powered watch, but despite being revolutionary for the time, they were not that reliable and wore out quickly, as transistors would not be effective just yet. Bulova went one step further, with Swiss inventor Max Hetzel, who joined the Bulova Watch Company in 1948, introducing the world to Accutron in 1960. A portmanteau of accuracy and electronic, the Accutron did precisely just that, by utilizing a 360 Hz tuning fork instead of a balance wheel as the timekeeping element. So it's these electromagnetic coils you see here that give the movement that very distinctive hum and super smooth sweep that would allow it that world-changing precision and also its highly marketable identity. So for almost a decade, the Accutron here ruled supreme as the most dependable and accurate timekeeping technology in the world. Accutron timekeeping devices were utilized in highly classified super high-altitude A-12 spy planes, of which the CIA issued Accutron watches to their pilots. They were also used as timing devices in top-secret rocket programs, NASA space satellites, to the clocks of the presidential Air Force One, and even cockpit instruments for the Apollo lunar missions. The Accutron technology later proliferated into the homes of millions in the forms of clocks in a whole plethora of shapes and sizes. But it was of course the wrist where it became super successful and captured the imagination of millions. From the wrist of the king of rock and roll himself to Hollywood icons of the time, its cultural impact was inescapable and profound. Its reign at the crest of an exciting new wave of technology that very much evoked the American-made spirit of anything is possible, unfortunately and naturally, like all things, came to an end with the introduction of quartz watches by Seiko in 1969. Production of the legendary tuning fork movement ceased in 1977. So fast forward to 2020, and Bulova have very much done it again. So the first thing you notice, well, obviously the size. And we're going to get into that a little bit later on because there's quite a bit to discuss there. But in terms of the weight and the finish, certainly this is of a luxury standard. The finish is impeccable. Materials are, of course, stainless steel. We've got a huge domed sapphire glass there. The power reserve is 2 years when it's in deep sleep mode, and it will revert to a kind of, the seconds hand will stop ticking, and you can even put it in an ultra deep sleep mode by pulling out the crown, and it will completely shut down. And then when you pop it in, it will, carry on. Oh, and there you see that it's actually charging. Look at the way it charges. It's utterly beguiling. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. So accuracy is about plus or 5 seconds a month, which is absolutely outstanding. And we have a water resistance of 50 meters. Comes on this, I would say, very restrained, textured leather strap. Nothing really to write home about. And of course, a double push button deployment there signed. We have these very angular lugs. In terms of how it wears, it's actually surprisingly comfortable, despite its being very, very large. It has amazing presence, but it's very deliberate, and we'll get into that in just a moment. So you see the seconds hand is running right now. To save energy, it will power down after it doesn't move around a little while, and then it will take about 5 seconds of movement. You just do the Seiko 7S26 shuffle there for about, I can't remember if it's 4-6 seconds or something like that, and it will get going again. Today, Bulova is owned by the Citizen Watch Group of Japan, who, as we've previously discussed, are one of the world's largest producers of electronics and watches. This manufacturing might not only assisted Bulova to develop cutting-edge new movements like the UHF movement in 2010, but now for Accutron to become its own brand. Positioned as what Grand Seiko is to regular Seiko, Accutron needed something truly radical to put this historic brand back on the map. So after an extensive 10 years of research and development, a team of dedicated engineers in Japan have come up with the world's very first electrostatic powered movement. This form of technology is by no means new. In fact, it goes back to the 18th century. But what is astonishing, nobody has been able to achieve this on such a small scale. Small enough, of course, to fit on a wrist, and beyond that, to actually power the watch. So how does this differ from the predecessor's tuning fork, or regular quartz watches, and even Grand Seiko's spring drive for that matter? Well, fundamentally, an electrostatic motor uses the direct attraction and repulsion of positive and negative electrical charges. The rotor sits between two electrodes. One carries a positive electrical charge and the other a negative one. Like a conventional automatic movement, the movement of the wearer's arm causes an oscillating mass to move. But instead of winding a balance spring, the edge of these rotors passes the electrode. It then acquires a charge identical to that electrode, which then oscillates between being attracted and repelled by the blades that are superimposed on these rotors. This causes the rotor to turn, and as a result, energy being created and a second hand that sweeps at a super smooth motion reminiscent of the original Accutron back in the day. So how does this differ from spring drive? Well, spring drive uses an electromagnetic generator with a quartz-controlled braking system, whereas here we have an electrostatic motor. And while spring drive is driven by mainspring, the Accutron uses electrical energy stored in a capacitor produced by these electrostatic motors. you missed my story of how the Accutron Spaceview got its futuristic look, well, it was a happy accident. In order to show off the radical new tech back in the 60s, special showroom demonstration models with see-through dials were produced. Customer demand for these watches with that very avant-garde aesthetic for the time was so high that Bulova eventually started selling them, and thus the Icon was born. The brand produced many ordinary versions that looked like regular traditional watches, as well as a ton of space-age variations, exploiting a watch that looked like nothing else available during this mid-century atomic and space age. Today, this look is all the rage, with horology watchmakers exposing the inner workings of their mechanical capolavori in order to show off innovation or high-end craftsmanship. It's crazy to think that Accutron was also a pioneer in terms of design, doing this style first on a mainstream scale. So it was only natural that they adopt the same look today, but this time with some extra refinement, including a high-polished beveling, contrasting smoke grey open-worked matte brushed dial sections, that signature emerald green synonymous with the brand, along with a transparent outer chapter ring. They've completed the dial with a beautifully multifaceted tuning fork, the Accutron logo now, and to highlight the graceful sweep of the seconds, the hand was made very much like the vintage models with this kind of golden gate orange, and then modern, I would say, sword style hands. Again, I think it's the same, similar style hands as my vintage one. Again, like the accidental icon of the 60s, we see the movement dictating the design. The main attraction this time is not only the electronics inside, but also the twin turbines and large electrostatic generator exposed so you can enjoy the kaleidoscopic and mesmeric effect when they move, which is unlike anything I have ever seen before. Watch designer Shoya Kaneko took inspiration from the evolution of iconic sports cars, especially the Porsche 911, and how it evolved over time. While the watch certainly does not look overly automotive in nature, what Kaneko was actually interested in is how the restrained minimalism of the original 911 became technologically modernized and refined over the years, while still maintaining its own distinctive identity. It's abundantly obvious he has succeeded here, and there is no mistaking this new Accutron is a descendant of the originals. You certainly get that hit of nostalgia. And just like its ancestors, it too would look right at home aboard the Nostromo, or Silent Running for that matter, with that inherently lovable retro sci-fi aesthetic. So let's talk about negatives. Well, the first thing that we naturally have to talk about is the size. It is a big one. I mean, definitely only for the larger wrists, but I understand why they couldn't go any smaller. The electrostatic generators typically vary from big enough to fill a whole room to something, the smallest I've ever seen was on a tabletop. So I've never actually seen an electrostatic generator this small, so we have to take that into consideration. Right now, the entire case is filled up with the movement, so this is just the size it is. I actually tested it with my Unico case. Well, actually to prove that my Unico case can take any size watch, not just small, but big ones as well, and thankfully it passes the Unico case test, which I think I might implement in all my reviews now. So yeah, it's not so big it's ridiculous. Another negative is the luminescence. While it is very effective with the dots around the periphery of the dial there and on the hands, I felt they missed a trick here. I feel they should have had a double dot or a different shape to differentiate and really give you a good orientation in low light. Bit of a missed opportunity there. You can tell I'm pretty much a diver guy, so that's what I always look out for. Another negative, this will not work in a winder, so don't bother putting it in a winder, it's a complete waste of time. In terms of value for money, you know, few will comprehend the costs involved. I mean, how much does 10 years of research and development cost? Can you imagine they would have had to make new machines just to make all the components? So the price is actually, I think, justified, considering you're buying something completely new. But that also has more negatives. For example, to service it, as you see on the back there, and I do like this kind of turbine engraving there with that beautiful sand, be blasted, sorry, finish in the center. Accutron Service Center only, so it has to go back to Japan. You should see their labs. They all wear hazmat suits. It's completely with airlocks. It's like some space age stuff. So in fact, we're kind of in uncharted waters, so to speak. So it'd be interesting to see. And in fact, they want you to send these back because they want to study the movement and see what's happening with it. So yeah, nobody outside of Japan yet. One quirky little thing I do love about my vintage, that is the crown. So you pull that to set the time on these old 281 movements. That, yeah, it's very quirky, and I love it because you don't have the crown anywhere on here. Yeah, the crown is very conventional on this one. It's just a signed standard crown with knurling. Obviously, there was no way they could put it on the back like the old ones, but I just think it would have been so sleek without a crown like its ancestors. But anyway, that's my own little nitpick. In the critically acclaimed 1960s set television series Mad Men, fictional copywriter Freddie Rumsen pitches his ad for Accutron. In this beautifully written scene, he concludes with the slogan, "It's the height of design and technology. It's not a timepiece, it's a conversation piece." Well, half a century later, the same can be said. To me, it seems like a truly exciting moment, as if we are back in the 15th century and witnessing Peter Heinlein miniaturizing table or mantle clocks into something portable for the first time. In an online world obsessed with gaudy, frivolous and vulgar displays of wealth over substance, think of this like a Richard Mille, but for those who truly care about horology, history, design, science and engineering. Is it oversized? Yes, of course it is. But look at it like this. This is also the very first generation. Every part of this watch is dedicated to the movement. It is not oversized for the sake of it. It feels almost like a concept car or a prototype that is still a little rough and untested around the edges. Kind of like the DeLorean in Back to the Future. It does add a little extra charm, I have to say. Something very special we must consider about this watch is it's a rare opportunity to own the first of something, the very first of an entirely in-house, proprietary made, new form of watch technology. I mean, when does that happen? I suspect, and actually, you know what? I don't suspect. Without a shadow of a doubt, I'll put my money on it. They're already trying to miniaturize this technology further. When they do, I will definitely buy one. This unfortunately just does not fit my scale. Like owning a concept car, few of these are going to be produced, and I suspect due to the very high costs involved. So while the asking price may seem expensive, in the long run, I feel these will appreciate in value as collector's pieces. It's not a watch for everyone, certainly. This unequivocally has the Marmite effect. But once you understand its significance, you understand that this is not just a conversation piece, but an actual piece of history on your wrist. If I saw somebody wearing this, I would automatically give them far more respect than the superficial status symbol allure of the Richard Mille it resembles. But above all, this signifies a clever and logical move that Accutron have now become their own entity. With this new technology, I feel that Accutron will be the Grand Seiko of the future. So, am I going to buy one? Well, it's obviously too big for me, but there is a part of me that wants to buy it purely almost like an objet d'art and display it in the war room proudly, because I love, you know, where this is going. This is just, it makes so much sense. Very exciting stuff. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts, queries, comments, opinions, all the rest of it down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and found it useful. As always, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Ciao.